What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Werewolf and a witch release Naruto from the seal? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Laying on his back surrounded by corpses was Naruto Uzumaki, the new Jubi Jinchuriki. After he had sealed the Jubi into himself, the war was over with Madara, Obito, and Kagaya dead. Everyone was celebrating before he sensed the evil intentions aimed at him from every shinobi. They were faking their happiness to get him to drop his guard, and it almost worked, but he was ready when they suddenly charged him, only for him to slaughter the lot of them. What am I going to do now? Naruto asked himself with a sigh before a blinding light filled his vision. Blinking, Naruto stood up to see he was surrounded by a sea of gold. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto looked around before he saw a man clad in white materialize in front of him. Who are you? I'm Kami. Kami introduced himself. What do you want with me? Naruto asked cautiously, not bowing down to Kami. Kami smirked at Naruto. That's one of the main things I like about you. You refuse to bow to anyone, even me. Anyway, I'm here to give you your reward for bringing peace to the world. Peace? I killed the entirety of the Shinobi Alliance. How is that peace? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Please, that alliance was never going to last. They would have turned on each other soon enough. With the Ninja Alliance dead, the Daiwaimos have outlawed chakra usage as a whole. Kami said. And without the Shinju's presence, chakra will cease to exist in a matter of days. Naruto said as he had felt all the chakra draining away before he was brought here. Exactly, Kami said before he snapped his fingers, and immediately Naruto's chakra exploded. Surprised, Naruto looked around himself at the aura chakras surrounding him. Before he could say anything, Kami spoke. The elemental nations is now gone. All excess chakra and nature energy returned to you. Returned? Naruto asked. You haven't realized it yet? You're not the Jinchuriki of the Shinju, you're the Shinju. Kami said. Naruto chuckled softly as he looked down to his palms. I had some suspicions, but I didn't have time to verify them myself. Is that why you're here, just to tell me that I've shredding my human coil, and I'm now a being of nature? He asked. I came to give you a new life. Kami said, getting a surprised look from Naruto. There's a world that's in its 10th century now, and I'm going to be sending you there. What am I supposed to do there? Save the world or destroy it? Naruto asked. There is no expectations for you. This is a reward for you, so enjoy it. Kami said before he de-aged Naruto before he could reply. Walking over to the infant Naruto, Kami picked him up and looked down at him with a smirk. You'll make a perfect addition to the Michelson family. He said before he placed his hand on Naruto's forehead. With a wolf gene, you'll fit into this world just fine. Naruto's eyes opened, they turned to golden amber before Naruto's chakra suddenly surged and his eyes turned red with a slit pupil. I guess a wolf gene empowered by chakra will be interesting to see. Vampire Diaries Universe. 10th century. Esther, Ayana and Michael were in their home discussing Esther's choice to stop doing magic, when they were called outside. Michael and the two women walked out to see storm clouds had suddenly appeared in the sky. What the? It was clear out here moments ago. Where'd the storm clouds come from? Michael asked before he turned to his wife and their friend Ayana. Ayana, have you ever seen anything like this before? No, but I sense a large amount of power approaching. Ayana said, just as a tower of lightning struck the ground, causing everyone to back away, with Michael standing protectively in front of Esther, and Ayana with his sword at the ready for any threats. When the tower of lightning subsided, leaving a small crater in the middle of the village. Everyone saw a disguised Kami standing there. Kami is in the disguise of Odin. Who are you? Michael demanded. I am the All-Father, Odin. Kami introduced himself, and watched as the mortals got onto their knees and bowed to him. Forgive me, Lord Odin. Michael said. Don't worry about it. Kami waved off the apology. I've come over give you and your wife something. Michael and Esther looked at the god in surprise. Come. The husband and wife walked over to Kami, shivering from the power rolling off of him. They watched as Kami brought his hands up as if he was carrying an invisible bundle, and in a crimson flash, infant Naruto appeared, causing the couple to go wide-eyed. This is my chosen one, Naruto Uzumaki. Kami introduced. He has finished the task I assigned him in his world, and as a reward I have brought him here to live a relatively peaceful life. Kami said before he played Naruto's life in the villagers' minds from every mob attack, to his fight with Kagaya, not wanting them to see him killing every shinobi. Michael and Esther looked at the baby. They were looking at a man-turned-child that held all the qualities they would ever want in their own children. Fearless in the face of danger, a leader, reliable, a warrior, a man that respects nature, someone that would protect his precious people till his dying breath. "We'll raise him," Michael said. "He'll have the family he couldn't have in his world." Esther said, taking Naruto from Kami's hands and looking at him as he stirred awake, allowing Esther to see his red eyes with 3 rains, and 3 dots on each rain, before they vanished to a deep blue color. Smiling down at Naruto, Esther spoke, "Hello Naruto, I promise you, your childhood won't be consumed in loneliness. I as your new mother will make sure you are happy." 7 years later, Michael walked through the snow-covered ground, looking around for someone. Coming into a clearing, he saw the spiky golden blonde hair of his adopted son, Naruto. He called, walking over to the boy who was sitting in the snow, hugging his knees to his chest, while looking down to the ground. "Am I a demon, father?" Naruto asked, looking at his palms. "Why would you ask such a thing?" Michael asked, surprised by the question. "I'm a better hunter and fighter than the other children. They look at me with such envy, they whisper demon, freak, and other hurtful things." Naruto said, not looking up at Michael. "They hurt your feelings?" Michael asked and made to scold Naruto for this weakness. "I don't care what they say about me," Naruto said, causing Michael to pause. "It's just that. What if they decided to spread rumors and choose to attack me? What if during their hunt for me, you, Mother, Freya, along with little Finn, are killed because of me?" Michael looked at Naruto in surprise before he smiled gently at Naruto, and kneeled down beside him, while placing his hand on Naruto's head, rubbing it affectionately. "No one will attack you, Naruto. Even though we don't share the same blood, you are my son. I will gladly die for you," Michael said, getting a smile from Naruto before he placed his forehead to his son's. "Now come, your mother has made supper," and little Freya grows worried. Smiling, Naruto stood up and walked alongside Michael. Present. The abattoir. Marcellus Gerard was getting fitted for a suit, accompanied by his right-hand man Thierry. "Damn, I do look good in a suit," he said. Thierry chuckled before he turned to the television, where a photo of 2 tourists were shown, Tina McGreevy and Joshua Rasha. "My guy at the docks is gonna come forward as an eyewitness, saying he saw those 2 drunkenly fall into the Mississippi. They'll be dredging for weeks. No one will come looking around here," Thierry said. "That's good, considering one's dead in a dumpster behind the county morgue and the other one is a vampire now." "Anything else?" Marcel replied before the tailor suddenly pricked her finger on a pin. "Ow," she hissed. Marcel, looking down, said, "Allow me, darling," before he crouched down and took her finger into his mouth, cleaning the blood off. "One thing, I sent 4 nightwalkers to look into a werewolf sighting in the quarter. I haven't heard from them since," Thierry reported. "That makes 10 dead nightwalkers in the last week." Marcel sighed before he stood up while straightening his blazer as he asked, "You think the werewolves are back in town trying to start some trouble?" Thierry sat up and said, "Look, I know you and Klaus are friends, but the fact is, since the originals showed up." Before Thierry could finish, Klaus arrived. "Oh, come now, Thierry. You're not still upset about that little, toxic werewolf bite I gave you, are you? I thought we were at bygones," he interrupted. Thierry looked to Marcel. "I see you've given him free rein of your compound now, too." "Yes, well, seeing as my family and I lived here, built the place, in fact," Klaus said. Marcel, knowing how violent Klaus is, decided to intervene before something jumped off. "All right. Come on, you both know the drill. Thierry's my guy, inner circle. Klaus is my old-time friend and sire. He's also a guest here. Peace, all right?" he said before he looked to Klaus. "All right. What you need, my brother?" "I'm afraid my sister Rebecca is insisting I demand Elijah's return. She's quite worked up about it," Klaus said. "I'll say," Marcel muttered as Rebecca had almost killed him and his love interest Cammy. Marcel and Rebecca never happened, they were just real good friends. "We're not gonna have 3 originals walking around town, are we? Half our guys think the sister killed the Nightwalkers," Thierry said. "Is that an accusation?" Foolishly, Thierry turned to Klaus and shrugged. Against an original, Klaus growled before he stormed toward Thierry, who looked to be ready for a confrontation, but Marcel interfered. "Okay, What did I say about peace? Marcel asked as Klaus smiled smugly at Thierry before Marcel tapped Klaus on the chest and said, "Come on. Walk with me." They walked out along the balcony of the building. As Klaus spoke, "Your inner circle man lacks a sense of humor." Marcel sighed before they walked down the stairs as he said, "He's a little overprotective but loyal to a fault. I saved his life back in the 40s, found him dying of a war wound outside a VA hospital. He'd kill for me and die for me. Plus, that boy can play the trumpet like you would not believe. Maybe I'll see if he can play a little tonight at the party. You're coming, right? How can I miss my chance to meet the city councilman as he accepts your gigantic charitable donation?" Klaus asked. "Oh, he's a schmuck, but he lets us do our thing in exchange for certain community services, like keeping our fangs out of the locals. Listen, about your brother. I would love to help you out, but Thierry is right. My guys are on edge. They see the original family moving in, vampires dying, it makes them nervous. If I hand Elijah back now, it might give the wrong impression about who's really in charge here. You know what I mean? You understand I had to ask." The French Quarter. Rebecca walked through the quarter, talking on her cell phone, to Klaus who was in the plantation basement. "Nicholas, for the love of Mary Magdalene, how long does it take to ask a simple question?" she asked. "Much longer than you'd think, considering the answer was, as expected, no. Marcel's man, Thierry, is suspicious. He thinks you killed 10 Nightwalkers." Klaus answered. "Well, that's a lie. I only killed 8. Should I make Thierry the 9th? Rebecca said. "Marcel is playing friendly. We can't kill the favorite son, or he'll catch on to us." Klaus replied. "So, war it is, then." Rebecca said. "Indeed. Do you know what to do with the witch?" Klaus asked. "I believe I do," Rebecca said, stopping in front of a store. "Good. You manage Sophie Devereaux. I'll take care of the next step," Klaus said before he hung up the phone and turned to the vampire Joshua, who was minding Klaus' vampire hostage. "I ordered you to drain him of blood. What's taking so long?" he asked. "Sorry, I'm not, like, medieval torture expert guy," Josh said before Klaus using his super speed grab a pitchfork and impaled the vampire. "What did he do to you, anyway?" "It's not about what he did. It's about what he's going to do when we're done here, which is whatever I want him to, just like you. For example, drive this through his torso." Klaus, having removed the pitchfork from the vampire, compelled Joshua and handed the weapon to him, and Josh immediately obeyed. Joshua, realizing what he did, said, "That is crazy. I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway." Klaus with a smug grin said, "It's called mind compulsion. Vampires can compel humans. Originals, like my siblings and I, can also compel vampires, and no one can compel originals. You following?" Josh nodded. "Good. That is how a brand new Nightwalker such as yourself is here doing my bidding with no one the wiser." "But I never had my guts drained out of me," Josh said. "Yes. That, young Joshua, is because I got to you before you had even a drop of herbal vervain in your system. You see, it prevents compulsion. Marcel has had his whole crew taking it since I returned to town, and that is why our friend here needs to be bled dry of it, so I can compel him to follow my every command. And with my brother currently in captivity awaiting rescue, we can't afford to be gentle about it, can we?" Klaus said as he took the pitchfork back and drove it through the vampire's torso and twisted it in. The French Quarter Jardin Gris. Rebecca waited outside the shop and turned to greet Sophie, who was approaching on the sidewalk. "Oh, so glad you could make it. Elijah only lies daggered and rotting whilst you dilly-dally. You're lucky I came at all. What do you want?" Sophie said. "Haley was attacked last night by Marcel's crew because somebody told him there was a werewolf in the quarter. She only made one stop. Whoever saw her here ratted her out. Watch and learn," Rebecca replied before she and Sophie walked into the store, but if she would have stayed for a second or two she would have saw someone she wanted to see since she was undaggered. Walking down the street in a crimson silk muscle shirt, black jeans, and a pair of red Jordans, the man had spiky golden hair, and 3 whisker marks on both his cheeks. He had also had deep blue eyes. This was Naruto Uzumaki, the true original hybrid. Naruto had a tattoo on his shoulder of a sun and moon with fangs connecting the two of them, the hybrid symbol on the cave wall from Season 3. The name Rebecca tattooed on his forearm, and he wore a green crystal around his neck. Naruto looked around for a moment before he crossed the street just in time to run into Sabine, who was giving a tour to the tourists. "Hello Sabine," He greeted, getting her attention as the tourists entered a shop to look around. Sabine turned around to see someone she hoped never to see again. Naruto felt the wave of fear flowing off Sabine, but he paid it no mind. Naruto. What are you doing here? Sabine asked. I haven't heard from my daughter in a couple of months and I'm worried, so please point me in her direction and I'll be on my way. Naruto said with a small smile. I don't know where she is. Sabine replied, causing Naruto to frown. Then where is Cynthia? Naruto asked. She died 8 months ago. Sabine said, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow. And none of you ancestral witches saw fit to call me and tell me my daughter's mother is dead. Naruto growled, taking a step forward, causing Sabine to back up, but before he could do anything the tourists exited the store. This isn't over. He growled before he turned around and walked away, heading to Rousseau's to get a drink, before he heard some surprising information from a passing vampire. Marcel, huh? Naruto muttered. I think I'll go say hello. He thought as he walked to the bar. Michelson Mansion. Haley was eavesdropping from the hallway, as Sophie, Rebecca, and Klaus were arguing behind a closed door. Are you out of your mind? No way. Rebecca paced in front of the sitting Sophie. It's very simple. We need you to perform a tiny locator spell to help us find our brother. Witches who practice magic in this town get caught, and they get killed. Sophie replied. Yes, about that. It seems you left out a crucial detail when we made our deal. Marcel's secret weapon. The way he knows when a witch is using magic. Klaus said as he sat down. Rebecca, who also sat down, said, Girl about yay high, cute as a button, anger issues. Sophie seemed to be in shock before she asked, Davina? Where have you seen her? I don't know. The little brat erased my memory right after she threw me out a window with her bloody mind. Rebecca answered. Let me cut to the chase. Davina has Elijah. You witches, I assume, want to get Davina away from Marcel. We don't know where she is. Ergo, we need magic. Klaus said with a smirk. Davina would sense it, Sophie said. Rebecca sat up and said, unless, of course, another witch, say, a traitor to the cause, Katie for example, was to perform much more powerful magic at the same time. That would create a smokescreen, concealing your very small spell from Davina. Sophie looked at them appalled for what they were suggesting. Katie doesn't deserve to die. Klaus angrily slammed his hands on the table and stood up, before he walked around the table and sat down in front of Sophie. Sophie Devereaux. You're in no position to be so principled. You can't win a war without a few strategic losses, no matter how regrettable they may be. How many times have the vampires been one step ahead, known something they shouldn't? Your sister, executed in the public square for practicing magic, who knew she'd be caught? Did she even attempt to flee? Sophie bitterly replied. She was caught hiding in a cargo hold of a freighter before it set sail down the Mississippi. And who, pray tell, of Marcel's valued inner circle manages his business at the docks? Klaus said. Katie's boyfriend, Thierry. Sophie said with a sigh. The abattoir. Thierry played his trumpet in the courtyard. Klaus and Marcel watched from the balcony. Klaus turned to Marcel and said, You're right. He's good. Marcel smirked and replied, Right? Music man, I call him. Ladies love him, but he's spoken for. He knocks around with this pretty little witch, says he loves her, but I don't know. Your brightest soldier is fraternizing with your enemy, and you don't care. Klaus asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, of course I care, but Thierry is a grown man. He makes his own choices, and I get some good intel. Besides, he's not gonna do anything to jeopardize what we're doing here. I mean, check this out, a vampire hosting a ritzy charity event. We have a community here. No one's gonna mess that up. Marcel said, and despite his ambition Klaus had to agree. Still, you don't want the witches to get too bold, given that a witch's tip about a werewolf in town led to the disappearance of your nightwalkers. I'm sure you've considered the possibility that it could have been a trap. Klaus said to Marcel, who frowned before he smiled. Well, maybe I'll send a little message. Marcel turned and shouted, Thierry. Take a team of nightwalkers to the cauldron tonight, do a little rousting. Oh, and Thierry? Make it nasty. With Naruto. Naruto was just outside the quarter at a manor, looking up at the large house with a look of remembrance as Rebecca's happy face flashed in his mind. Naruto sighed and walked inside the house to see dust everywhere. Turning his head, Naruto paid no mind to the 18 plumes of smoke that suddenly appeared and subsided to show 18 clones. Clean up the manor, and set up a room for our little princess for when I find her. Naruto ordered his clones, who immediately set out to do their tasks. Walking to a photo of him and Rebecca, Naruto released his energy, and immediately the sound of rats and bugs of all kind can be heard scurrying out of the manor. This will be our home once more, Becca, this I promise you. Almost 100 years we've been apart, it's time to change that. Abattoir. Marcel watched from the balcony as the party crew were getting everything ready. So it's true, a voice suddenly said from behind him and his day walkers, causing them immediately to turn around to see eyes glowing in the shadows. Picture how wolves' eyes glow in the dark, and out stepped Naruto. Swallowing the lump in his throat, Marcel spoke, Naruto Uzumaki. Why so formal? I thought we were closer than that. Naruto said before he looked around. Apparently not. Show some respect, one of the daywalkers said. Marcel's eyes widened. Jerry. He called out in warning. Jerry looked to Marcel and said, I'm sorry boss, but these originals seem to think they don't need to show you respect. Jerry walked up to Naruto and poked him in the chest, causing Naruto to look down at where the contact took place. Don't talk to the boss like you're his equal, mutt. Show him some respect. Naruto looked up into Jerry's eyes, before he looked over Jerry's shoulder into Marcel's eyes and smirked, before he said, he's right, I should show you some respect. And as an apology I'll show you the technique I was working on back then. No, Marcel yelled, but a glance from Naruto sent him and his crew to the ground, paralyzed with the exception of Jerry, who looked around in shock before he froze up, and groaned as he looked to Naruto, who had his hand raised toward him. Stop, Marcel shouted, trying to force himself up off the ground. Relax, Marcellus. I'm not going to kill him, hopefully. Naruto said before he brought his hand toward his body, and Jerry began groaning in pain, getting everyone's attention, and they saw blood flowing from his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, before they started gushing out in waves before it stopped and Jerry desiccated, before everyone's eyes. Naruto smirked before he looked to the blood and clenched his fist before the blood faded away like mist. Naruto looked to Marcel's friends to see fear on their faces. I dropped by to say, hi, but it looks like it's a bad time, so I'll see you at your party, Marcel. Marcel and his guys stood up as Naruto vanished in a swirl of fire, before they went to Jerry, thinking he was dead, before they heard him groan. What the shell was that? Diego asked Marcel. That man is 100 times worse than Klaus, be careful around him. Marcel said, don't antagonize him. 2 hours later, with Klaus. Klaus sat at a desk perusing some papers when his phone started buzzing. Answering it, he said, little sister. Rebecca, who was at Rousseau's, said, well, brother, I believe I've made certain Marcel will be properly distracted tonight. Dare I ask? Klaus asked. Let's just say his attention will not be on us. I did my bit. What are you doing to ensure Elijah's safe return? Rebecca asked. Currently, I'm preparing insurance against the tender-hearted. Klaus said. Meaning? Rebecca asked. We need proper motivation for Katie to cast a powerful spell tonight. I'm creating that motivation. Marcel has ordered a rousting of the witches. Klaus said. At the cauldron, vampires jumped from the balconies, causing mayhem while the witches in attendance screamed in response. And I, in turn, have arranged for things to go tragically wrong. Klaus said. Back at the cauldron, the vampires continued to upturn tables and destroy anything they could get their hands on, while the witches screamed. Thierry snuck off through a back door into Jardin Gris. His girlfriend Katie was hiding behind a wall, peeking around it before she saw him and ran to greet him with a hug and kiss. Hey, what's happening out there? Katie asked. Oh, it's Klaus. He's convinced Marcel that the witches are planning to make a move against him. Marcel wants us to send a message. Thierry said before he knocked over some shelves, looking apologetic. And if he thought I was playing favorites because I'm in love with a witch. Hearing what he said, Katie interrupted Thierry and said, say that again. Thierry smiled and said, I love you, Katie. And all this is gonna be okay, I promise. Before he kissed her, Klaus continued to speak. Marcel may not be concerned with Thierry's romantic entanglements. Thierry walked out of the Jardin Gris, bumping into the vampire Klaus, tortured and compelled. I already got that one. Thierry said and walked away. The vampire went into the shop anyway. But there are other crimes which he'll be less inclined to so easily forgive. Thierry was talking to a vampire when he heard screaming from inside the Jardin Gris. He turned to see the vampire dragging Katie outside, biting her neck as she screamed. "Leave her alone," Thierry shouted, not giving the vampire time to obey his order. He sped over and threw him off of Katie. "Get off," he shouted, before he threw the vampire across the courtyard. The vampire smashed onto a table. Thierry ran over to him, grabbed a broken table leg, and used it to stake the vampire, killing him. The courtyard went silent, and the other vampires circled around the scene of the crime. Killing a vampire, for example. That would be unforgivable. If Katie hopes to save her one true love from Marcel's punishment, well, a rescue mission like that will require something positively magical. But then, what's worth dying for, if not love? At the cauldron, Katie stared at Thierry, horrified, and Thierry himself looked like he knew the consequences will be dire. The abattoir, masquerade galas. Rebecca and Klaus entered the party, arm in arm, taking in the dark, wild atmosphere. Acrobats perform, dancers handle exotic animals, and confetti falls glittering upon the party guests. Well, this certainly is a fitting backdrop for tonight's events, I must say. And pray tell, what events are you talking about? A voice said behind them, causing them to turn around to see a man with a black and red mask on his face. Picture spawn, only the mask is black and red. Worried that they may have been found out, Klaus and Rebecca acted quickly and grabbed the man and sped away from the party unseen by anyone. Alley. The brother and sister duo slammed the unknown man into the alley wall before Klaus attempted to pull the man's heart out, but the man's hand gripped his before it could penetrate his chest. And Klaus was shocked when he couldn't overpower the man, before he groaned in pain as the bones in the hand were crushed before he was launched back away from the man. "Well, that was unnecessary," the man said as he dusted his black suit off, as Klaus stood up as he and Rebecca watched the man warily. If he was able to overpower Klaus, he was not to be taken lightly, so I'm guessing by how you both grabbed me and brought me here to kill me, you don't want Marcel knowing of your potential betrayal. So I want one thing. And what is that? Klaus asked, already visualizing how he was going to kill this guy. "A dance with your lovely sister," the man said, shocking both the originals. "What?" they both asked, speechless. "That's all I want in exchange for my silence," the man said with a hidden smile. Rebecca and Klaus looked at each other before Rebecca nodded. "Fine. But only one dance," she said. "Great, I'll be waiting for you at the party," the man said before he started to walk away. "Wait, who are you?" Klaus asked, causing the man to stop and sigh, almost as if he was disappointed. "I would expect after 900 years together, my wife and my baby brother would recognize my voice," the man said. Klaus and Rebecca gasped when they heard what he said. Hesitantly, Rebecca took a step forward. "And Naruto?" she asked, hopefully only for the man to turn her and remain silent. Rebecca walked up and grabbed the bottom of the man's mask as he tilted his head up, licking her lips. Rebecca pulled the mask up, and she and Klaus gasped when they saw the whisker marks, and Rebecca immediately snatched the mask off Naruto's head. With tearful eyes, Rebecca slammed her lips into his before she pulled back after a moment and hugged him, smiling while also crying. Naruto smiled as he hugged his wife, before he looked over to Klaus, who was also smiling. Pulling away, Naruto walked over to Klaus and pulled him into a brotherly hug as well. Pulling away, Naruto looked at Rebecca and Klaus. "I missed the both of you dearly. Where's Elijah?" "Marcel has him. We came up with a plan to get him back, and if we're going to do it, we have to get back to the party," Klaus said, getting a nod from Naruto. "I'll help in any way I can so that we can reclaim the city, but first I need to find my daughter," Naruto said. "You had a child?" Klaus asked as he and Rebecca looked at Naruto in surprise. "When we were separated in 1919, I searched for you all, but I didn't have any luck. I thought Michael had succeeded. I hunted him down to get revenge, but he was sealed up in some tomb, so with nothing to keep my emotions in check, I went on a killing spree. I drank my fill of blood and alcohol, and one day I woke up with a woman beside me, and weeks later she found me and told me she was pregnant," Naruto said, looking up to the crescent moon. "It turned out she was a New Orleans witch, away from home so she can experience a normal life. I managed to talk her into staying till the baby was born. For 16 years I've been able to take care of my daughter every summer. She's all that held me together. If anything has happened to her, I will turn New Orleans into a wasteland," Naruto said, looking at them with his hybrid features on full blast. Masquerade galas. Naruto, Rebecca and Klaus entered the party smiling, before Rebecca and Klaus spotted Cammy as she entered the party, wearing white angel's wings and a vintage white beaded dress. Rebecca looked pleased, but Klaus' smile fell. "What's she doing here?" Klaus asked his sister. What better way to distract Marcel than to put his very human new girl in a room chock full of vampires? Rebecca said before she crossed the room to speak with Cammy. "Hello, darling. You look precious." Marcel noticed Cammy's arrival from a balcony above, causing him to frown. "This party is ridiculous, but I think unintelligible with this dress," Cammy said before she made eye contact with Klaus, who was talking to Naruto smiling. "Is he your infamous one true love?" Cammy asked, referring to the conversation she and Rebecca had earlier that day. Klaus and Naruto walked up as Klaus spoke. "He's the brother, actually, and my sister is right. You do look stunning. Clean up pretty well yourself," Cammy said. "Well, don't be fooled, love. I'm the devil in disguise," Klaus said smiling, which Cammy returned. "Cammy, this is my one true love, Naruto," Rebecca introduced. "Nice to meet you," Naruto said, shaking Cammy's hand. "Nice to meet you too," Cammy replied. "Excuse us," Naruto said, taking Rebecca's hand and leading her to the bar. "Shall we?" Klaus asked, extending his arm. Cammy, smiling, said, "Okay," as she took his arm. Naruto and Rebecca arrived at the bar. "Scotch, please," he said before turning to Rebecca. "So, who've you been?" "Well, in the 20s, Klaus daggered me for 90 years. When I awoke, I went to Mystic Falls. My mother was revived and she conspired to kill me and my siblings. Then I tried to find the cure. I almost had it, but I was failed," Rebecca said. Naruto looked at her for a moment before he made to go toward Klaus, but Rebecca stopped him. "Hey, Naruto, it's okay," grabbing him by the arm. "It's not okay, Rebecca. I told him if he ever even attempted to dagger you, I'll give him such a beating that'll take him months to recover from," Naruto said, getting a smile from Rebecca. "It doesn't matter anymore. With you back in my life, everything will be okay," Rebecca said, placing a chaste kiss on her husband's lips. Naruto smiled at Rebecca before he sensed someone behind him. "Hello, Marcellus," he said, looking over his shoulder at Marcel. "How's Jerry?" "He's better," Marcel said. "That's good," Naruto replied with a nod. "I'm impressed with what you did with the city, especially with the most recent tragedy." Marcel smiled slightly, hearing the praise from a man he looked up to, and has helped him a lot in his life. "Thank you," he said gratefully. Moments later, Cammy and Marcel danced together as Naruto, Rebecca and Klaus watched them. "So you tried to kill her last night, then invited her here to distract Marcel," Naruto said. "It's working perfectly, isn't it?" Rebecca asked, smiling. "Can't argue with that," Naruto replied before he grabbed Rebecca's hand and pulled her onto the dance floor. "I thought you said you were in community work," Cammy said. "Community fundraising. Throw a party, folks open their wallets. It's kind of my thing. Guess I'm what you call a necessary evil, but enough about that. I just want to be right here with you." Diego entered the courtyard and saw Marcel dancing with Cammy, while their faces neared each other. But Diego interrupted them and whispered in Marcel's ear, while Rebecca and Naruto saw what was happening, and Rebecca whispered in Naruto's ear, "That's my cue to leave." Peeking Naruto on his lips, she walked away, as Naruto walked over to Klaus and ordered a drink. "Why are you doing this? We both know what Marcel means to you," Naruto whispered. "He took what we built, stole it from us. I'll take back the city and raise my child here, and give him or her the childhood I always wanted, and will make sure that I'm a better father than Michael ever was," Klaus said, looking to Naruto, who nodded and smirked. "I always have your back, Nick. That hasn't changed," Naruto said, causing Klaus to smile at him and nod slightly as he and Naruto turned to look at Marcel, who was barely controlling his anger, while listening to Diego tell him the full story of what happened at the cauldron. Marcel, seeing Thierry enter, turned to Cammy and said, "Excuse me," before he walked over to Thierry and grabbed him by the throat, pushing him away from the main party, while Cammy watched, her eyebrows knitting together. "What the hell did you do?" Marcel asked before Diego interfered. "Whoa, not here. No, not here," Diego said, pulling Marcel back, while Klaus smiled. Cammy watched, disquiet paralyzing her features. The cemetery. A sobbing Katie talked with Sophie inside a candlelit burial chamber. "I know you think he's a monster," Katie sobbed. "It doesn't matter what I think. Thierry killed another vampire. He broke Marcel's biggest rule. You'll never see him again, unless we do something. Sophie said. We? Katie asked perplexed. I want to save our people. You want to save Thierry? There's only one way we can do both. Sophie said, grabbing Katie's hands. A little while later, Katie and Sophie sat out in the cemetery, arranging items for a ritual, before Sophie looked to Katie. You ready? Katie began by sprinkling sand over their tableau. Unknown attic. Whispering voices grew louder. Davina thrashed, asleep in her bed but disturbed by the magic she could sense, before she suddenly sat up. Marcel. Something's coming, she said before she got out her bed and walked over to her easel, and immediately started to draw on the paper madly for several seconds, then stopped. Magic. The abattoir, masquerade gala. Marcel and his guys had moved to the balcony above the party. I want to hear your side of it. Marcel said. Hey, Marcel, come on, Thierry started. Your version. Go. Marcel interrupted with a order. We were tossing the cauldron. This guy, some nightwalker, he attacked Katie for no reason. Thierry surmised. His name was Max. I turned him, and as far as reasons go, he doesn't need one. She was a witch. He was a vampire. Now he's dead. Marcel said with his eyes narrowed. Camille watched them from below. Thierry took a deep breath. I didn't mean for it to happen. He said, you broke my most important rule. Damn it. T, how long we been friends? 70 years. Marcel asked, getting a nod from Thierry. I turned you into something that would never die. I gave you a gift. And I have been loyal to you all this time, and I still am. I'm still your friend, Marcel. I swear, that hasn't changed. Thierry said. Down below, Camille continued to watch with a look of apprehension. As Klaus joined her, are you all right, love? He asked. After a moment of silence, Camille spoke. He's got a temper, doesn't he? I guess this is the moment I remember I know better. Camille walked away sadly, before Joshua walked up to Klaus, standing slightly behind him. Klaus reached into his coat's inner pocket, and withdrew a folded piece of paper and handed it to Joshua, who pocketed it and walked away. Klaus watched the balcony as Joshua appeared next to Marcel and handed him the paper. We found this at his girl's place. Josh said. Marcel looked at it. It appeared to be a spell written out. Marcel turned back to Thierry. Betrayal shining in his eyes. Still my friend, huh? That's funny because it looks to me like that little witch of yours got her hands on a spell that I keep locked away. Marcel, I have never seen that. Thierry tried to defend himself, but Marcel was on a roll. Shut up. I see on your hand, you still have the daylight ring I gave you. So what would you need with the recipe for making new ones? Unless maybe you and Katie were gonna go off and start a little kingdom of your own? Marcel asked rhetorically. Marcel, no, Thierry said. Here's a lesson in friendship. Friends don't lie to me, they don't break my rules, and they do not steal what is mine. Marcel shouted, before he turned and shoved the paper into Joshua's chest and took a moment to breathe, before he turned back to Thierry. Oh. For the crime of murdering one of his own, I sentence Thierry Vancourt to 100 years in the garden. Thierry looked at Marcel in shock, while down below Klaus and Naruto, who were listening, smirked. And it begins. Klaus said. The cemetery. Sophie was still at the cemetery, preparing her locator spell, when Rebecca appeared, causing Sophie to look up when she heard her. You're doing the right thing. It's the only way to find Elijah. Rebecca said. Sophie turned back to her map, and said, I'm doing what I have to do. Sophie then started chanting while holding Elijah's pocket watch over the map. The abattoir, masquerade gala. Klaus and Naruto watched as more of Marcel's men lead Thierry out of the party and out onto the street, where a small crowd of more vampires watched Katie approach from down the street, chanting. The hybrids watched the event unfold from a window above. Attic. Davina was madly scribbling on her easel as she drew Katie. With Marcel, the vampires saw Katie and Thierry yelled, Katie, no. Like clockwork, Naruto said just as Katie waved her arm and a lamp's light exploded, while all the vampires grabbed at their heads, falling down in pain. Marcel alone rose back up to face Katie, but she smashed another light with her magic and Marcel went down again. Cemetery. Sophie continued to chant for her spell, as Rebecca urged her on, hurry. With Katie, Marcel rose again, but Katie used magic to break his bones, and he fell again shouting in pain. Attic. Davina, sensing that Marcel was in pain, shouted, no. Before she lifted her hands slowly. With Katie, Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly when he sensed magic surround Marcel as he slowly rose while Katie watched astonished. "You're here to save your man." "Well, come on, little girl," Marcel said before he charged at her with a growl, only for Katie to come out of her stupor and break his bones again, sending him to the ground groaning in pain, while in her room fell as well with a shout of pain. Naruto, seeing Katie reach behind her, spoke to Klaus. "You better move now, or she'll kill your son." Katie lifted a wooden stake above Marcel. "Die, you son of a bitch." She spat with a lot of venom in her voice. "No, Katie, don't," Thierry shouted while still on the ground in pain. Klaus, seeing Katie about to stake Marcel, sped in and snapped Katie's neck, causing her to fall to ground dead. The cemetery. Sophie suddenly stopped her spell. "Something's wrong." Katie's magic stopped. "I can keep going," she said, getting ready to continue her spell. "You can't. She'll sense it," Rebecca protested. "No, I can find Davina. I just need another moment," Sophie said, about to start. Rebecca, seeing how stubborn she was being, grabbed the map with the black sand on top of it that Sophie was using and threw it aside. Sophie stood up and turned to Rebecca, who said, "You may be willing to die to get your witch back, but Haley and the baby will die with you. Elijah will never forgive us, and rescuing him will be for nothing. It's over. We failed. With vampires." As the vampires took deep breaths, Thierry crawled over to Katie's body. "No. Katie. No, 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 no," he said as he sobbed over her body, cradling it. Marcel stood up, watching him before he looked at Klaus and nodded, while Klaus smirked. The garden. Thierry stood chained to a wall in some underground room, while Marcel stood across from him. "Just tell me this. Was she worth it?" Marcel asked. "I loved her," Thierry said, before Marcel, using his super speed, drove an iron stake into Thierry's gut, causing him to groan in pain, before Marcel held out a wooden mallet and a man appeared, taking it. "Seal him up, and let him rot," Marcel said, getting a nod from the man before he started to lay bricks over wet cement, clearly intending to build a wall to encase Thierry, like so many before him. Davina's room. Davina was kneeling at Elijah's open casket, before she heard the door open and looked up to see Marcel enter, before she ran to hug him. "You're okay." "I was so worried." Marcel, pulling back from the hug, said, "Thank you. Whatever you did, I felt it. You helped me. It was the old ones, wasn't it?" Davina asked. "Actually, Klaus is the one that saved me tonight," Marcel said, catching Davina by surprise. "I'm gonna make things right, starting off by giving him his brother back," he said before he walked toward the coffin. Davina turned toward him. "No," she protested. "What?" Davina, Marcel started. "No, you said the old ones were dangerous. I won't give him back until I know how to kill them." Davina interrupted. Marcel looked from Davina to Elijah, before he nodded. "Fine, but you had to hurry." Okay, I'll try," Davina said before she closed the coffin as Marcel left. Davina sighed and went over to her easel, and got prepared to draw something when she heard a voice speak from behind her. An attic. Davina turned around to see a man with his back turned to her by Elijah's coffin. "Now why would you be up here?" When Davina saw the man turn around, she gasped and dropped her pencil. "Daddy?" she asked in shock, getting a smile from Naruto. "Hey princess," Naruto said before Davina darted over to him and hugged him. "I was so worried about you," he said before he pulled back and asked, "Why are you up here?" "You should have called me." Davina looked up at him before she told him the story of how she was used as a harvest girl, and the witches now plan to find you and kill you. "So that's why they brought Nicholas back. You had to give Elijah back," Naruto said, controlling his temper, since he didn't want Davina to ever see him like that. "No," Marcel said, "that they were dangerous." Davina said, "He's technically your uncle. Elijah cares about family. He won't hurt you," Naruto said. "But he'll hurt Marcel," Davina replied, and Naruto couldn't disagree with that, as Marcel and Elijah's relationship still hasn't fully recovered. "Once I know how to hurt them, then I'll give him back," Davina said. Naruto sighed and nodded reluctantly before he crouched down by the coffin. "I know you can hear me, Elijah. Davina is not to be harmed. I'll protect the family till you're awake. I promise," Naruto said before he placed his hand on the coffin and used a minor gravity pull centered around the dagger to pull it out and lowered it back inside. Turning to his daughter, Naruto said, "Davina, I'm going to trust you on this. I'll handle the witches, but under no circumstances are you to tell Marcel about our relationship to each other." "Why?" You're a witch, vampire, and a werewolf. The seal I placed on you will continue to suppress your vampire and wolf side till your 21st birthday. That makes you a person of extraordinary power and a perfect weapon. With your heritage a secret, I can at least trust that Marcel won't force you to do something against your will. Naruto said. I promise, Daddy. Davina nodded before she went over and hugged him. I love you, Daddy. I'm happy you're here. I love you too, so much. I'll protect you no matter what, even against Klaus. Naruto said, kissing the top of Davina's head, while she smiled happily, feeling even more safe with her dad here, someone she knew loved her unconditionally. The cemetery. Katie's body lied prepared for her final rites, as Sophie waved a smoking bundle of herbs over her body. Other witches, including Agnes and Sabine, stood around her. I told you no good would come from this unholy alliance of yours. At least I'm doing something. What about you? Sophie retorted before she left. Sabine, tell them what you saw. Agnes said. It's the girl, the wolf. Her child will bring death to all witches. Sabine said, getting murmurs from those around her. That's not all. She said, getting everyone's attention again. Naruto Uzumaki has returned to the quarter. Horrified gasps and expressions filled the cemetery, as their own personal boogeyman has returned. A full moon shined brightly in the night sky. Everything was peaceful while inside the plantation. The mayor was elated he had shot his bastard son, and the beast had probably bled out, before one of the demons found him to heal him. Unknown to the mayor, two figures were approaching his home. Surround the house. Any human leaves, kill them. Naruto ordered before 10 wolves walked out the shadows of the woods, before they took their positions around the plantation. You sure we should be here? A voice asked behind Naruto, who sighed and looked back at Marcel, who looked around nervous. Klaus said I should be the better man, and leave him alone. Klaus told you that, because that's a lesson a father should teach his son, but as an older brother, it's my job to help you deal with your enemies. This bastard and anyone else in the plantation deserves what's going to happen tonight. Naruto replied, getting a nod from Marcel. Walking up to the front door, Naruto knocked, and after a few moments the governor's wife opened the door. Before she could get a chance to speak, Naruto grabbed her by the neck and tossed her over his shoulder, snapping her neck as he did so. Before the corpse could reach the ground, a black blur sped from the corner of the plantation and jumped, catching the woman in midair. The blur was a werewolf. Grabbing the corpse in its jaws, the wolf proceeded to drag it into the woods. Come on, Naruto said to Marcel, who was looking towards the woods before he followed Naruto. With a wave of Naruto's hand, the lights in the plantation house went out. Find the old fool, I'll handle everyone else. Marcel nodded before Naruto sped off, and screams of terror soon filled the air. End flashback. Naruto awoke with a small yawn, and looked down to see Rebecca and Katerina Petrova aka Catherine Pierce asleep on his chest, stroking their hair. Naruto remembered the confrontation he had when he retrieved Catherine. That's all for now. If you enjoyed, then please like, share and do comments.